Well, I think it's time we should plant the rest of our sweet corn. Dad, what do you think?
I think so too. But it's really hot today, and I sensed you didn't have a lot of love in you today.
Yeah, I don't know. When it gets up around 90 degrees, I just can't bring myself to, every single seed, stick it in the ground. We're going to try the scientific approach. We need to make sure that the seeds are going to drop at regular intervals and at intervals that we want them to drop at for proper spacing.
The idea is we want a seed, in our case, probably every 4 3/4 inches, right?
Yes.
And we don't want 2 seeds anytime, and we always want 1 seed.
Right. This planter works by using this plate that will spin around, and hopefully there's a kernel of corn in each one of these holes, and when it gets to a certain point, there's a hole in the bottom plate here that the kernel will fall through and fall into the ground. So
Okay.
for here, it's right there.
So when we rotate this, what we see is that every time one of those holes gets on top of the pipe down there, you're going to start dropping kernels in. So what happens to keep a whole bunch of kernels from going in there?
The thought is we'll use this spacer and then a brush to allow whatever is in the plate to pass through, but whatever is on top of the plate and not in this hole will be pushed aside so it can't get to the actual place where it would drop through.
Okay.
The problem is if your kernels are small enough that 2 kernels can fit into this hole, then you're going to get a double.
The seed size actually varies, doesn't it?
Yeah, so this is the ambrosia we planted last year. These seeds are maybe just a little bigger almost than the Aspire triple sweet that we're planting this year. So we might have to choose a different plate or maybe make some modifications to how we're using the planter because of the difference in seed size.
And also those seeds are not round.
Yeah, they're kind of oddly shaped.
Katril, I've talked to several manufacturers of these little planters, and all of them say that sweet corn is very, very hard to drop consistently because of the way these kernels are all shriveled up and they're misshapen. Now, there are planters that are called plateless planters, and they have a totally different mechanism. Some of the ones that a lot of people use on food plots have finger pickups, that as the brush is brushing it over, the finger slaps down on a seed, and then the brush tries to pull that out, and hopefully only 1 seed can get caught under the finger. But before we do any more with this, Katril, we ought to kind of look at the rest of these plates, hadn't we, and kind of see just how much flexibility this Haas seeder has.
Yeah, so we've got plates with 1, 2, 4, and 6 holes.
Why would we need different amounts of holes?
So that's going to determine how much space is in between the seeds that you're planting. They recommend using plate 4 and 6 for sweet corn, depending on if it's small or large, and those are both 4-hole plates. And it says that they'll be spaced 4 3/4 inch apart, and that sounds good to me.
And they also talk about this optional spacing. So let's say, just hypothetically, we were using plate number 6, and we thought 4 3/4 was too thick for our corn. What would we do?
Well, I just take some tape and tape over a couple of these holes, and suddenly your spacing is twice as much.
Yeah, if you have only 1 hole, what is the spacing for that?
That's 19 inches.
So this makes 1 round for every 19 inches of travel. I noticed that the plates have a varying number of holes, varying size of holes, and then there's one other difference.
There's thickness. So if you have very large seeds, you'll want the thickness so that your seed will actually stay in the plate as the brush is over it. If you have your really thick sweet corn in one of these, the brush is going to come over and just totally knock it out.
Yeah, so now the sweet corn wouldn't work in that plate, would it?
Yeah, so if you have really, really small seed, you don't want to have to fill up the entire container that the planter has for seeds, so you can just fill this up, and then that'll allow you to have your seeds kind of more compact, and hopefully it'll increase the accuracy of your dropping.
And I believe the brush will still fit right down in there.
I think so, yeah.
It says broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, turnips, mustard, rutabaga, fine seeds. We've chosen a plate. We chose number 4, I believe. Why don't we actually see how well it drops?
All right.
The brush looks a little worn already. We're tight in there, and as you rotate this, if you get it totally tight, the wheel won't turn. You can actually see it when I just hold it down. So you can't tighten it that tight. And even more so than that, in our experiments off camera, we've noticed that having this brush a little bit loose actually seems to help our drop more than we would expect. Katril, why don't we see if we can catch how many kernels drop in 1 round of this wheel?
This way we'll be able to see how many seeds it's actually dropping, and we've calculated that 1 turn of the wheel is 10 times of the hole passing over where it can actually drop out. In an ideal world, we would end up with 10 seeds in here every time.
Yeah, and I'm actually not sure that's perfect because we didn't do it by calculation, we did it by experimentation. I've lost this mark, so we're going to go 2 rounds. I heard a double there at the last for sure.
There was a lot of doubles there. There's 24 seeds.
24 seeds. And we would have, if perfectly, we would have had 20. What we can't tell with this approach, without doing some better testing, are the singles all dropping properly? Are we getting one every 4 3/4 inches? And the reason we can't do it like you would expect is that the back wheel ends up running over the seeds, and it gets to where it doesn't roll good on our concrete. We decided to put them on these sawhorses to avoid that very issue. Ready?
That's 14. I'm getting a lot of doubles.
Question is, are we missing any? Doubles we could hoe out. If we miss them, we can't really add them very easily.
16. I think maybe you should put the brush down a little more.
So we're going to adjust the brush a little bit lower, a little bit tighter to see if we can get some of those doubles reduced. Let's go 1 round that we don't count. Okay, here we go. We're going to count this one.
12.
Okay.
8.
Here we go again. One thing I believe we're seeing is that the tighter we tighten that brush downward, we reduce the number of doubles. You've basically got 2 adjustments here. You can adjust the size of the hole in your plate, and you can adjust how loose or tight that brush is on the plate. The Haas planer works a little bit differently than the Earthway planer. The Earthway planer has a vertical, kind of a gravity approach, and the plates have little cups, and it holds the kernel and lets gravity behave as the brush. The way we always did the Earthway planer as a kid, sweet corn was a lot cheaper then, but we would just plant it 3 or 4 times and then come out with a hoe and thin it out. But sweet corn has gotten so much more expensive, you need to do a better job planting the first time now. I really think the only way you can get a better mechanical drop is to invest a lot more in the planter metering system. And those Deere 7000 planter units, they do a lot better, but they're meant for real agricultural needs. Now you can buy those on eBay that you can hook behind your tractor, but for a 1-row planter it's about $2,000, and that's for essentially a worn out planter row that's no longer useful for agriculture, that somebody has cut off of a large planter and made a 3-point hitch mount for a small tractor. I think the Haas seeder is a good compromise for those of us that can't afford the full-blown, Deere seed metering system.
Dad, I'm kind of getting tired of just counting seeds all the time. Can we actually go plant the corn? Look at the baby corn plants. Mom, we've tilled this 1,000,000 times. Why is Dad tilling it again?
Exactly. It's odd. Well, now it's too dry. Even after all that rain we had, but that was weeks ago now.
But if we till, there'll be some more moisture in there.
Katrina, we need to try to adjust the depth of this thing and get that set the way we want it. We do that with this knob, okay? So if you screw it down, it pushes this whole unit downward.
Okay.
It's spring loaded to hold it up against this stop here. But this right here is the depth indicator, okay?
Ah, I see.
This means 1.5 inches. So the long one means 1 inch, that means 1/2.
Okay.
So the center of that right there is 1.5 inches. This is supposed to mean 1 3/4. This 1 1/4 inches. We're going to go down and set ours at what it looks like, probably a little over 1 inch.
Okay.
I don't know how accurate that depth will be, but it won't be exactly 1 inch. It looks like not quite 1 1/4 inches. Let's kind of look at how this planter works. It's got these 2 discs here that create the furrow. The seed then drops through the pipe into the bottom of the furrow. Then we start the covering, and that's got the chain here. After the chain, we have the rear wheel, which gently kind of firms or packs the ground. Now after the chain is ran over it and the wheels ran over it, then the stand, this is actually the stand that holds the planter up, it actually drags along as well.
Oh, okay.
And that serves to be kind of a final little covering. So I tell you what, why don't we go out and drive this at the end of the garden and just kind of see it in action before we put any seed in it.
Sounds good.
Now what I notice here is because this ground is so loose, yeah, we're going in 1 inch or so, but we're also leaving it in quite a V back here. So we're really probably going in a lot deeper overall, especially, if we were to come along and rake that closed, or if it would happen to rain a lot. It might actually serve us well to take the Haas wheel hoe and build ourselves a little ridge, because it looks to me like this ends up packing that down and leaving a V, and what last thing we want is rain just getting in there and standing right on top of your seeds.
Right.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, you still look pretty silly doing it.
Okay, here we go. They also said to go really slow to allow the planter a chance to kind of work.
How do you think it looks, Mom? Pretty good, but you can still see the V.
You know, Christy asked if they're covered enough, and I think, given that we're planning on cheating today anyway, I think they are. We're planning on watering this a little bit.
In these rows, we're only going to plant singles, since that's a lot easier, and we'll just put them about every 4 inches. How wide are you making these rows, Dad?
I'm making these 32. The idea here is if we did need to or want to, we could get the tractor still down the row. The tractor's perfect on 36-inch rows.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it can straddle them perfectly and have the same amount of space on both sides of the tire.
Yeah.
But it will fit over a 32-inch row without hitting the next 2 rows. The main reason we wouldn't plant them any thicker than that is when it comes harvest time, we want to be able to get down the row to get to the ears.
Right.
So.
And it can get pretty crowded when there's so many leaves on the stalks and everything.
Yeah.
You stuck, Dad?
I was stuck. Every so often this planter gets stuck and you just kind of have to stop and kind of jiggle it a little bit so that it can get the unstuck. What happens is some of the kernels get stuck between the plates and the dropping mechanism. Catriel, do you think the Haas seeder was planting them with love?
Well, I think it was a different type of love. We'll see how they come up, but I think they feel sufficiently loved.
Yeah. It was too hot to use the hand-to-hand love that we always had.
Yeah.
We've got another 5 rows of corn planted, in addition to our first 5. We should have a lot of sweet corn.
Yeah. Triple sweet corn.
And we'll see you next time on Tractor Time with Tim.